July 1945. World War II was nearing its end. The United States Navy cruiser USS Indianapolis had just completed one of the most secret missions of the entire war. The ship had successfully delivered critical components for the atomic bomb that would later be dropped on Hiroshima. The crew believed the dangerous part was over. They were wrong. Shortly after midnight, in the darkness of the Pacific Ocean, Japanese submarine I-58 spotted the Indianapolis. Within moments, torpedoes slammed into the ship. The explosions were catastrophic. Fire erupted. Metal twisted. Men were thrown from their bunks. Panic spread through the vessel. The USS Indianapolis began sinking rapidly. So rapidly that many sailors never had time to reach lifeboats. Within just 12 minutes, one of America's most powerful warships disappeared beneath the ocean. Nearly 900 men entered the water alive. But their nightmare was only beginning. The Navy didn't realize the ship was missing. No rescue mission was launched. No help was coming. The survivors drifted beneath the burning Pacific sun. Dehydration began. Exhaustion followed. Then came the sharks. Hundreds of sharks, drawn by blood, noise, and chaos. For 4 days and 4 nights, the survivors fought hunger, thirst, madness, exposure, and one of the most terrifying predator attacks in maritime history. By the time rescue finally arrived, only a fraction of the crew remained alive. What happened in those waters became one of the greatest survival stories ever recorded, and one of the most horrifying. In the summer of 1945, the USS Indianapolis was one of the most respected ships in the United States Navy. Commissioned during World War II, the cruiser had already survived major battles across the Pacific. Its crew believed they had seen the worst the war could offer. Then came a mission unlike any other. The orders were secret. Extremely secret. Even many members of the crew had no idea what they were transporting. Armed guards protected the cargo. The containers remained sealed. Questions were discouraged. The ship departed carrying components that would help create one of the most powerful weapons ever built: the atomic bomb. At the time, the Manhattan Project remained one of the most closely guarded secrets in history. The Indianapolis successfully completed its delivery mission. In fact, it set a speed record crossing the Pacific. The crew felt proud, relieved, and eager to return home. Many sailors believed the war would soon be over. Some talked about seeing their families again. Others dreamed about life after military service. For a brief moment, hope filled the ship. But while the sailors looked toward the future, danger was already waiting in the Pacific Ocean. A Japanese submarine commander was searching for targets, and fate was bringing the two vessels toward each other. The crew of the Indianapolis had no idea they were sailing directly into one of the deadliest maritime disasters in American military history. Shortly after midnight on July 30th, 1945, the Pacific Ocean was calm. Most of the crew aboard the USS Indianapolis were asleep. Others stood watch beneath the darkness. Far below the surface, the Japanese submarine I-58 had detected the cruiser. Its commander carefully tracked the ship's movement. The Indianapolis was traveling alone. No escort ships. No immediate protection. To the submarine commander, it was an opportunity. At approximately 12:15 a.m., the order was given. Torpedoes launched. Moments later, the first explosion tore into the starboard side of the ship. A second followed almost immediately. The force was devastating. Fuel tanks ignited. Massive fires erupted. The ship shuddered violently. Men were thrown from bunks. Others were trapped below deck. The crew immediately realized the damage was catastrophic. Water rushed through shattered compartments. Electrical systems failed. Communication equipment became unreliable. The Indianapolis was dying. And it was dying fast. Most warships sink slowly. Not the Indianapolis. Within minutes, the cruiser developed a severe list. Water flooded compartment after compartment. Crew members raced through smoke-filled corridors. Some attempted to launch life rafts. Others fought fires. Many never escaped. Captain Charles McVeigh quickly realized the situation was hopeless. The ship could not be saved. The order was given. Abandon ship. Sailors jumped into the darkness. Many entered the water without life jackets. Others carried severe burns and injuries. Then, just 12 minutes after being struck, the USS Indianapolis disappeared beneath the Pacific Ocean. Nearly 300 men went down with the ship. Around 900 remained alive in the water. But no distress call successfully triggered a rescue operation. The survivors were now alone. As dawn arrived, the survivors expected rescue. Surely someone knew they were missing. Surely aircraft would arrive. Surely ships were already searching. But no rescue came. Hours passed. Then an entire day. The Navy did not realize the Indianapolis had disappeared. Administrative mistakes and communication failures meant no search operation began. Meanwhile, the survivors drifted beneath the relentless Pacific sun. Fresh water ran out almost immediately. Food was non-existent. Salt water burned eyes and skin. Injuries worsened. Many men suffered severe burns from the explosions. Others battled dehydration. The ocean stretched endlessly in every direction. There was no land. No rescue ships. No hope visible on the horizon. Then came the sharks. At first, only a few fins appeared. Most survivors tried to remain calm. The sharks circled, watching, waiting. Then attacks began. Some sailors vanished beneath the water. Others screamed warnings. The ocean became a place of constant fear. The sharks were attracted by blood, by noise, by injured men struggling in the water. Survivors gathered in groups hoping safety existed in numbers. But the attacks continued. Day after day, night after night. Many sailors later described the shark attacks as the most terrifying experience of their lives, because they never knew who would be next. By the second day, the survivors of the USS Indianapolis had entered a new kind of nightmare. The torpedoes, the explosions, the sinking ship. Those horrors were over. Now they faced something slower, something relentless. The Pacific Ocean itself. The sun rose each morning like an enemy. There was no shade, no shelter, no escape. Hour after hour, the survivors floated beneath scorching heat. Salt water soaked their skin. The constant exposure caused painful burns. Lips cracked and bled. Tongues swelled from dehydration. Eyes became inflamed from the glare of the ocean. Many sailors had already suffered injuries during the sinking. Burns from exploding fuel. Broken bones. Cuts from twisted metal. Now those injuries became worse. Infections spread. Pain intensified. And still, no rescue ships appeared. The men attempted to organize themselves into groups. Some huddled together for comfort. Others tried to encourage one another. Conversations often centered on home, families, sweethearts, the things waiting for them if they survived. Hope became one of the few resources they still possessed. But hope was becoming harder to maintain. By the third day, dehydration began affecting the mind. Some sailors became confused. Others became irrational. Several men believed they could see ships on the horizon. They pointed excitedly into the distance, only for the visions to disappear. Some thought they saw islands, palm trees, fresh water, food. None of it was real. The Pacific Ocean stretched endlessly around them. The line between reality and hallucination slowly disappeared. And every passing hour brought new suffering. The survivors were no longer simply waiting for rescue. They were fighting for their sanity. Fighting for their lives. Minute by minute. Hour by hour. Day by day. And somehow, many refused to surrender. By the third day, many of the survivors were no longer fighting only the ocean. They were fighting their own minds. The human body can survive surprisingly long without food. But without fresh water, The situation becomes deadly very quickly. The sailors had now spent days floating beneath the Pacific sun. Their bodies were shutting down. Their thoughts became confused. Their judgment disappeared. Hallucinations spread through the groups. Men began seeing things that weren't there. Some believed they could see rescue ships approaching. Others pointed toward imaginary islands. A few claimed they could see cities on the horizon. Many became convinced that fresh water existed just beyond reach. Some sailors broke away from their groups, ignoring warnings from their friends. They swam toward things that did not exist. Others simply drifted away, never to be seen again. The psychological toll became almost as deadly as the sharks. Survivors later described conversations with people who were no longer alive. Some believed they were already home. Others spoke to family members thousands of miles away. Reality itself was beginning to collapse. Yet amid the chaos, acts of leadership emerged. Certain sailors refused to give up. They moved from group to group, encouraging others, reminding them to stay together, reminding them to keep fighting, reminding them that rescue could still come. Friendships became lifelines. Hope became a weapon against despair. Many survivors later said that without the encouragement of their fellow sailors, they would not have survived. The Pacific Ocean had become a battlefield, and the enemy was no longer just thirst. It was hopelessness itself. As night fell once again, the survivors prepared for another terrifying darkness, and many wondered whether they would ever see another sunrise. On the fourth day, everything changed. At approximately 11 o'clock in the morning, a routine patrol aircraft flew over the Pacific Ocean. The mission had nothing to do with the USS Indianapolis. The crew wasn't searching for survivors. They were conducting a normal patrol. Then someone spotted something unusual below. At first, it looked like debris, but as the aircraft approached, the truth became clear. There were men in the water, hundreds of them. The pilot could hardly believe what he was seeing. Immediately, a radio message was sent. The USS Indianapolis had been found. For the survivors below, the aircraft seemed almost unreal. Many thought they were hallucinating again. They had spent days seeing imaginary rescue planes. Why would this one be different? But this time, it was real. The pilot circled repeatedly, marking the location, calling for help. Soon additional aircraft arrived. Then ships. One rescue pilot made a decision that would later become legendary. Ignoring orders, he landed his aircraft directly on the rough ocean surface. The conditions were dangerous. The aircraft was never designed for such a rescue. But he could not leave the survivors behind. One by one, exhausted sailors were pulled aboard. Others were secured to the wings. Every available space became a lifeline. As rescue ships finally arrived, the scale of the tragedy became clear. Of nearly 1,200 crew members aboard the Indianapolis, around 900 had entered the water alive. Only 316 survived. The rest had been claimed by exposure, dehydration, injuries, exhaustion, and the sea. The nightmare was finally over, but its scars would last forever. The rescue of the USS Indianapolis survivors should have been the end of the story. But in many ways, it was only the beginning. Questions quickly emerged. Why had the ship been sailing alone? Why had no rescue operation been launched sooner? Why did it take 4 days for anyone to realize the ship was missing? Investigations followed. Controversy followed. Families demanded answers. The Navy faced criticism. Captain Charles McVeigh became the focus of much of that criticism. Many believed he had been unfairly blamed. For decades, survivors defended their captain, arguing that the disaster resulted from larger failures beyond his control. The debate continued for years. Meanwhile, the survivors carried memories few people could understand. They remembered the explosions, the darkness, the thirst, the sharks, the friends who never came home. Some rarely spoke about their experiences. Others spent decades sharing the story so the world would never forget. Today, the USS Indianapolis is remembered as one of the greatest survival stories in military history. Not because of the ship itself, but because of the men. Men who endured conditions almost impossible to imagine. Men who survived 4 days in open ocean against overwhelming odds. Men who refused to give up. Their story reminds us that courage is not always found in victory. Sometimes, courage is simply surviving one more hour, one more night, one more day. And because of that courage, the story of the USS Indianapolis continues to inspire the world. The story of the USS Indianapolis is difficult to forget. A secret mission, a sudden attack, a ship lost in only 12 minutes, hundreds of men stranded in open ocean, 4 days without rescue, and one of the most extraordinary survival stories in military history. But perhaps the most remarkable part of the story is this: the survivors never gave up. Even when rescue never appeared. Even when dehydration clouded their minds. Even when the sharks arrived. Even when hope seemed impossible. They kept fighting. And because they kept fighting, 316 men survived to tell the story. So now we ask you, what do you think was the most terrifying part of the USS Indianapolis disaster? The torpedo attack? The sinking? The sharks? Or the 4 days alone in the Pacific Ocean? Let us know in the comments below. And if this documentary taught you something new, please like, share, follow, and subscribe for more incredible true history stories. Because history isn't just about dates and events. History is about people. People who faced impossible odds. People who changed the world. And people whose stories deserve to be remembered. And before you go, tell us, what unbelievable historical event should we uncover next? Because history is often stranger, more dramatic, and more terrifying than fiction.